Welcome to the YouTube channel of Gujarat Government Physiotherapists Association. As a physiotherapist, we are specialist of movement system. Movement system is one of the most important system of our body. Identifying the correct movement is an important part of daily practice. So today we are learning same thing from a very senior physiotherapist and movement specialist, Dr. Jaimin Bhatt. So not taking much of all of your time and handing over to Dr. Jaimin Bhatt sir.
Thank you, Gujarat Government Physiotherapy Association, to give me an opportunity to share my knowledge. Hello, friends. Today we are going to discuss about the understanding faulty movement pattern of the human body. In our routine clinical practice, we encounter with the different type of movement pattern. We prescribe many exercise to the patients, but after a few days, we are not getting enough results from the patient's perspective. So what are the findings that we need to see in this procedure? I hope this presentation will help you and improve your clinical skills. A brief introduction about me. I have graduated in 2007. I have been working with an ISRO and also with the arthroscopic surgeon. I am pursuing a kinetic control since 2017. As we all know him, a quote from Vladimir Janda: time spent in assessment will save time in a treatment. According to the gender, there are two principles of treating the musculoskeletal system: the structural assessment, and the second one, the functional assessment. The structural assessment, as you can see on the right side of the picture, the fracture of patella. The structural assessment has been done primarily by the orthopedic surgeon, and the diagnosis done with the help of various kind of imaging. When your diagnostics testing is inconclusive or the approach for the structure is not curative, then functional assessment plays a major role. When you have an impairment of the movement in the human body, there is always a altered biomechanics. So to correct the biomechanics, the clinician must have a good thinking process and the observation technique. The functional abnormalities are identified, and it also allows the clinician for the better understand to find the exact cause of the lesion. So, what is physical literacy? Physical literacy means it is the motivation, confidence, and competence of the individual to complete his physical activity, or we can say to complete his functional task. In a functional assessment, one must have a movement competency, a basic mobility, stability, as well as the proper motor control. Then and only we improve the capacity of the movement, and then we concentrate on the sport specific skills. But when you have an inadequate foundation of movement competency, or in we can say it's a literacy, it convert into the faulty movement patterns. In a functional assessment, there are two types: to identify the movement or a tissue which are painful, and the second one, to identify the faulty movement pattern where there is a painless dysfunction. Physical literacy is must for each and every individual to get the to get the specific skills. To get the proper movement in a synchronized way, there has to be a muscle balance. But when you have a muscle imbalance, what does it mean? There is a change in length and tension ratio between the agonist and the antagonist. The muscle imbalance creates with the repetitive movement and error in neurological program. The evaluation of muscle imbalance, this great two example has been given by the Vladimir Janda: the upper cross syndrome and the lower cross syndrome. We all are familiar with these two syndrome. In muscle imbalance, we all see for the short muscles as well as the weak or inhibited muscles. Depending on the short and inhibited muscles, we focusing the muscles to get the balance and make the patient pain free. So evaluation of muscle imbalance is also important. Here we are taking a few examples of the faulty movement pattern. Uh, there are few exercise as well as the movement pattern that we usually use in our routine clinical practice. So what are the things to be considered while assessing the movement? It should not be done in acute stage. Posture and gait analysis is the first priority. Expose the area for the better observation. Minimal verbal clues. Interpreting aberrant movement pattern. 3 to 5 repetition is required to assessing the movement. And the last one, observation should be done on both the sides. And during the assessing movement, limb trembling or intermittent resistance, if you find out there, it indicates that there is a weakness or a fatigue. The Janet Travel said, after an injured tissue heals but muscle learns, they readily develop habits of guarding which outlast the injury. When the tissue heals after the immobilization period, or we prescribe him an anti-inflammatory medication, but still there is always a disturbance in the movement of a particular joint. So once the tissue heals, the pain subsides, we need to train the movement in a certain way that the patient does not have a problem in his routine activity. What is the rehabilitation strategy for the correcting the movement? There is no evidence for the best practice. We should target the inhibited muscles, remove the potential cause of the inhibition, and we need to stick to the ACE approach. Activate the muscles, control the movement, and improve the endurance of the muscle. So now we discuss about the hip extension movement pattern. The indication for the hip extension movement pattern is low back pain, developing a future back pain, and the ankle sprain. So now what is the faulty movement for the hip extension that we need to consider when we ask the patient to do hip extension? There is a deviation of the lumbar spine, a recruitment of upper back muscles, inability to maintain the knee in a flexion position, early hyperlordosis, and decrease the range of hip joint. When you find there is a deviation of the lumbar spine, it indicates that the patient has a loss of control of his oblique muscles, and inability to maintain the knee flexion. It also indicates that his hamstrings are overworking. So how to correct this hip extension pattern? First of all, remove the initial potential cause through the MFR, dry needling, or a mobilization. So what is the faulty movement in hip abduction? The superior pelvic shift, as you can see in this picture, the hip flexion, limited abduction, and the pelvic rotation. Pelvic rotation, hip flexion, and the superior pelvic shift, these are the three common faulty movement that we usually see when patient does a hip extension, and we ask the patient that if he does a pelvic rotation, we tell the patient that do not roll the pelvis backward. If the patient still is not understanding regarding the pelvic rotation, we do this abduction by keep a support on the lumbar spine. So these 4 points of faulty movement of the hip abduction that we need to keep in mind. When you observe the patient during the gait cycle and you found a pelvis asymmetry, as I told you earlier, and you find a Trendelenburg gait, compensatory Trendelenburg gait positive, then this step down tail test helps us a lot to find the dysfunction. As you can see on the left hand side of the picture, she does a step down with a proper alignment of the hip joint as well as the femur as well as the tibia. In the second picture, when she does a step down test, the knee goes into the adduction and there is an excessive knee flexion, or he or she might have a loss of dorsiflexion also. And the third thing is that she learns on the ipsilateral side. So it indicates that she has a loss of control on the pelvis as well as she has a weakness or inefficiency of the gluteus muscles on the opposite side. So step down test is very much helpful for us for the pelvic asymmetry, as well as those who are complaining of pain in a descending stairs. So now how to activate the hip abductors muscles. In the first picture, you see that she does a clamshell exercise, but the way she does a clamshell is absolutely wrong. As you can see in the picture, she rotates his pelvis as well as the trunk. In the below, it's a correct way of doing the clamshell exercise. She does only the hip external rotation. There is no any movement of the pelvis as well as the trunk. The second one, the hip abduction, as we discussed earlier, the superior pelvic shift, when he does a hip abduction, there is a superior pelvic shift. But in the below picture, a lady does a hip abduction in a controlled manner, because she doesn't want to allow the pelvis to be shifted superiorly. So if we want to control the movement from the faulty pattern, we need to train the movement in a small range of motion. And the third one is that the bridging exercise. We all are familiar with the bridging exercise. The first, there is a excessive hinging of the lumbar spine, as well as she does a excessive extension of the spine. The correct way of bridging is, if you draw a line from the thorax to the knee, it should be straight enough, and there should not be any spine hinge, so you can properly activate the abductor muscles. So now how to improve the control of the hip abductor muscles? You can start with the flat surface, and then gradually you can go for the rocker board, or in a later stage, if you want to give a more challenge to your patient, you can use a small perturbation on a single leg stance position with the use of rocker board or any Duradisc. And once you improve the control of the muscles, there is also improve the endurance also. In a standing position, you can ask the patient to do hip abduction. If he leans on either side, you are not increase the endurance of your gluteus muscles. It is the compensatory movement pattern. So for that, you need to check again for the inhibitors, weak or inhibition muscles, correct those muscles, and then ask the patient to do this movement again. And the below picture, you see over here, she does a good single leg bridge. This is also a great exercise to improve the hip abductor endurance. The overhead squat movement, it is not necessary we need to check squat movement for each and every individual. We need to ask the patient's functional requirement. Depending on that, the squat movement should be implemented for the patient. Let's say an example, a patient is not doing a squat more than 5 or 6 years, and he came to us for the low back pain or any knee pain, and we ask the patient to do a squat. He fails to do, because his body is not used to for the squat movement. So these are the clusters of signs that we usually see during the squat movement assessment. There is a loss of dorsiflexion, knee valgus, a feet turnout, low back arch, the flat feet, and a low back round. A feet turnout compensation pattern, it very rarely we are seeing in the patient. The knee valgus, loss of dorsiflexion, and low back arch. These are the three very common things that we usually see in the squat movement. So what are the if one of the compensation we see in the squat movement, then which joint we need to address to see the range of motion? When you see the excessive forward lean, there might be a decrease in ankle dorsiflexion, there is a decrease in hip extension, or a decrease in the hip internal rotation. From this table, you can understand that which joint we need to address when you find the compensation pattern. There are also a differential test to see that when if the patient has a proper ankle dorsiflexion, and still we see in the Scott assessment there is excessive forward lean, then there might be another cause for the excessive forward lean. So now once we identify the range of motion observation, limitation of the ROM, then which are the muscles are weak for this compensation, why they develop a compensation. There might be a range of motion restriction, or there might be a strength assessment, a strength issue. The tibialis anterior, gluteus maximus, or and the core muscles that we need to check for it to to clear this compensation pattern. The next test is a wall angle test, a thoracic spine mobility that we can check through this test. Usually, when we ask the patient to stand against the wall, if he has a lack of thoracic mobility, the thoracic spine goes into the extension. There is a limitation of the hip abduction movement, as well as the wrist is more than 1 centimeter away from the wall, and also there is a lumbar lordotic curve. The right side of the picture, the lady has a flat thoracic spine as well as the lumbar spine. It indicates that she has a good thoracic mobility. But how to correct this faulty position? The overactive muscles we need to stretch, or we need to inhibit those overactive muscles and activate the rotator cuff, rhomboids, the middle trapezius as well as the lower trapezius. And also we need to improve the thoracic spine flexion position. Indication for the shoulder abduction pattern is upper back pain, a shoulder pain, a pathology, any shoulder pathology, or a neck pain. The faulty movement, the elevation of the arm for 60 degree, as you can see in the picture itself, the prominent inferior angle of the scapula, contralateral side trunk flexion, and the protraction of the scapula. These four classical signs that we usually see in a shoulder pain patient, or when we ask the patient to move his shoulder into abduction or in flexion, these four classical signs we usually notice in the patient. So how to correct this pattern? First of all, we need to set the scapula in its optimal position by applying the tape. I usually apply the tape which starting from the mid axillary line, from then pull backwards to the inferior angle of the scapula, and the second tape I usually apply it from the mid part of the deltoid to the C7 spine. So after applying the tape, as you can compare on the both side of the shoulder joint, the affected side of the shoulder you can see it is a little bit higher as compared to normal side. And also you need to activate the lower trapezius along with the serratus anterior also. If you have a proper glenohumeral joint 100 degree, then and only this lower trapezius exercise will help you. So to activate these muscles is very much important to correct the shoulder abduction pattern. And to improve the control of the shoulder joint, it is to integrate the hip and trunk movement with the shoulder joint. It helps us to facilitate the scapular protraction as well as the facilitation of the scapular retraction. The PNF pattern helps us a lot to improve the coordination of the entire kinetic chain. So these are the exercises you can use to improve the control of the shoulder joint. The hip and trunk flexion which facilitate the scapular protraction, these usually exercise we can use after the post-operative patient when there is a limit, when there will not be allowed any shoulder movement. So along with that, these scapular muscles also facilitate by doing this movement. So which are the muscles we need to improve his endurance? The serratus anterior, lower trap, middle trap. And if it require rotator cuff muscles may be strengthened. It is depending on in which movement patient has a pain. If the patient has a pain in shoulder flexion, then the rotator cuff, your anterior part of the muscles works as a movers and the posterior part of the muscles works as the stabilizers. So depending on the pattern of the shoulder movement, you need to improve the endurance of the particular muscles. So now the last one, a single leg balance test. A single leg balance, why we need to assess this single leg balance? Because the 60% of the gait cycle compromise with the single leg stance position. As you can see above the three pictures, these three pictures shows us a different single leg balance test. In the first, as you can see, there is a asymmetry of the pelvis, as well as there is a little bit of hip adduction. Okay, in the second picture, there is a little bit of hip knee flexion also. We may say he has a pelvic asymmetry as from the position of his arm. And the third one is that he has a limitation of the hip flexion. That this pattern, we usually, when we ask the patient to do stand on a single leg, maybe they have a fear of fall, or they have a poor core control. So is there a change in rotational position of the shoulder or pelvis when we ask the patient for single leg balance? Yes, there might be a change of the shoulder or a pelvis. Depending on the rotation, right rotation or a left side rotation, we need to address his oblique muscles as well as the gluteus muscles to correct the position. So what are the elements that we need to check for the frontal plane as well as the transverse plane when we ask the patient for the single leg stance? When we ask the patient to go for a single leg stance position and patient does a shoulder abduction or a scapular elevation, there might be a neck tilt to compensate the single leg balance, the ipsilateral hip stability, the observe the foot and toes. Are the toes gripping the ground, or is the ankle dorsiflex or the plantar flex? Most of the time when we ask the patient go for single leg stance, we see the flickering of the tibialis anterior muscles and the patient start trembling, or he or she his shoulder goes into the abduction position. So these are the elements that we need to keep in mind, and depending on that we start the depending on that we need to address the muscles and to activate those muscles to clear the these faults and get the patient give a patient a good single leg stance, so the patient stands for more than 20 seconds or 30 seconds. So in summary, first of all, to correct the pattern, remove the potential inhibitor. We need to get the optimal range of motion to assess the faulty pattern. Activate the muscles first. The movement should be rhythmical, and we should not give a too much verbal cues when we assess the faulty pattern. So these are the reference that I use to complete this presentation. I hope this presentation will find you a great information and improve your clinical skills. Thank you so much. Find us on a different platform, the social media, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, at the same name, Proactive Physio Knowledge. Thank you so much.